Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. My name is Lara Savanaye. I am the Community Manager at European Leadership University. And before we get started, I will briefly tell you a little bit about this series. Now, European Leadership University is a university focused on the tech skills gap and bridging that skills gap by educating new talent. But at the same time, we also see that there is a need in the market to bring different people, for example, working in AI, working in data science, in conversation with one another, and also to educate the market more so on this field that is very hyped up, but not always so well understood. So we have had a series of webinars. This is the second rendition of our Building a Data Science Team series. During this series, we are talking with different data and AI experts, data science practitioners themselves, directors, recruiters, how to set up your organization for success in AI. And today I am joined by Reinier van der Michelaar. Thank you, Reinier, for joining.
Hi, Lara. It's a pleasure.
And Reinier is the Director of AI and Data at Ortec. He is also an AI strategist. And today we'll be talking about management strategies and how to set up your AI, your data strategy, and to scale that up in the organization as well. We'll be talking about different pillars, 4 different pillars. So Reinier will walk us through it. Now, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to also include them, of course, in our talk today. You can use either the chat down below or the Q&A button. If it's very relevant, I will immediately try to go over the question, but if not, we'll make sure that we have enough time at the end to go over your questions too. If you wish to, I would love for you to maybe introduce yourselves on the chat. If you could just share a brief note, why you're here today, maybe your position and what you're most curious about. We'll also keep an eye on that as we're going over Reinier's chat. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to you, Reinier. Thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining.
Okay, thank you very much. And from this Thursday afternoon, a dark, rainy day in the Netherlands, I'm very pleased to have an hour of a webinar with you all. We have a nice group here in this webinar, so let's kick it off. Just a bit about me. Let's see if I can get this working. Yeah, there I am. I'm a strategy consultant, AI strategy consultant at Ortec, but I'm still also working in my own consultancy firm, Buster Group, in which we do digital transformations, where I have the lead in the AI strategy practice. Combination with Ortec is very fruitful. Did a lot of work for big and small companies. Was involved in Apple a very long time ago, but that was big fun. And now, helping organizations to get value out of their AI investments. And let's talk a bit about AI to refresh your mind. Artificial intelligence in itself isn't new. It is started in the 50s, but then it was more a sort of rule-based learning. So we try to model the artificial learning by if this, then that else lines. And that worked in a very simple way. But when we wanted to make that bigger, we ran into problems of sheer just computing capacity. The CPUs weren't fast, storage was very expensive. So we came into a sort of AI winter, as they call it. But then in the 90s and early this century, we started with machine learning. And that was indeed the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So finding patterns in large data sets. And when you find a pattern in a large data set, when you have the X, you can once you have the formula, you can predict the Y. And that was the, let's say, early 2000s, the 2000, it was the start of the machine learning and AI activities. And then in the early of this decennium, we came into the deep learning area where artificial neural networks became very powerful, and they could learn of unstructured data. So there we get the natural language programming, we get the image recognition, the voice recognition. That is all due to the real powerful deep learning algorithms. Very shortly, let's look at the right disk, the red disk, because that's the most relevant one. There you can see what AI makes possible. Now we have the bots and the chat bots who can really give you a relevant answer. We have virtual assistants like Siri, and I hope she doesn't start talking back to me now because my iPhone is on my desk, but she remains calm. That's good. Robotic computer translation, image recognition, face recognition, smart robotics. There's a lot of very useful applications that AI makes possible. And that's all powered by basically math and stat science, because it's all mathematical math, but it's underneath this engine. So there's a lot of really useful applications being developed, and that can be used in many sectors and functions. As you can see here, within consumer, there's a lot of activity where AI can be reaped. Financial services, fraud detection is already really big. In, let's say, consumer services, chatbots is already very well accepted. But what you see is that a lot of companies are still struggling with really getting value out of AI. There's a lot of investment. Many data scientists are working really hard to get good solutions. There are lots of proof of concepts being done, but what the problem is that there's too much proof of concept not reaching out, reaching to the end state of a full functional solution. And that is a big pity, because investments are being done, but no value is being reaped. And I think that one of the big problems is that when you start working with AI and advanced analytics and data, we tend to think about a technology game. But I think that's the total wrong starting point. It's, of course, it is a lot to do with technology. But the biggest hurdles, the biggest problems are in the, let's say, the business side, the business management side, the organizational side of AI. And I'll get back to that later. But what you see is that the proof of concepts are being done in a good way. And they're based on data, they're based on technology, smart infrastructure. But it's more than that, because if you only have several proof of concept in your organization, it's not going to scale. And that's where the value is. And scaling needs not only technology developments, but also organizational developments. One of the great metaphors of Cassie Gazirkov, she's the Chief Decision Officer of Google. She says machine learning is like cooking. You got ingredients, you got your appliances, you got recipes, and then you get dishes. And I think this is a perfect metaphor, because data are the ingredients where we create a prediction with. That's the raw ingredients, the basis. Then you have the algorithms, and you can choose out of many algorithms depending on the type of prediction that you want, the type of dish that you want to serve. And once you have chosen a good algorithm, or the best algorithm that you think is for the prediction you want to make, then you have to start modeling the algorithm to create the prediction. Now, to get this metaphor into the situation where you are in a proof of concept, it's like being a home chef. You know, it's fun. You can walk to the store and get some ingredients. On the fly, you choose what you want to use, a barbecue or an oven or a grill. You figure out a good recipe and you make your dish. And that's great fun, and you have a good dish. But suppose that you are a home chef and you want to become a 3-star Michelin restaurant chef. That's a different ballgame. Then you need processes. You need people who really know what to do. You need repeatable, understandable, adjustable processes. You need tooling. You need people who really understand what to do. And I had a great movie about that, of a fantastic good kitchen in a 3-star restaurant in France. That's a bit long for now, but there you see the efficiency and the drill and the way of working that those guys have. And once you want to scale up your AI in your organization, you want to get to that level, not at the fly buy ingredients and at the fly choose what you like to eat. No, you have a strict, good process, an infrastructure which you really use. People are using the same wordings, so they really are working together, and that's where you get the scale. Because if you have this funnel, which you may recognize, is the idea generation to proof of concept phase, evaluation, the professionalization. Well, the first two are fun, and they're relatively easy. But the last phase, the professionalization, that's a tough one. There you want business value, and for business value you need repeatable processes, especially efficient processes. So what to do and how to get to a level where you are a full professional organization with repeatable and efficient processes. Well, we developed a 4-pillar process for that, where we advise to start with action learning projects, because if you don't have projects, it's not gonna work. You have to experience the difficulties in ongoing projects. You have to do your strategy development, and there I'll get back to in a bit more detail. Your capability framework, which are the critical dimensions or capabilities that you have to have in your organization to make this work. And finally, we advise in a coordinating and supporting unit. Let's go a bit deeper into that. So there's the project funnel, ideate, experiment, produce. There's the AI value, what you want to create. You have your data, you got your model, your prediction, you got your insight. Then you want to optimize, you have your action, you measure, and you reap your value. These are 3 ways of visualizing, let's say, the project process. And the last one is define the projects or the project objectives, get your data, model your data, interpret and communicate, and especially implement, document, and maintain, which is another really important factor in being a professional AI organization, because lots of organizations forget to maintain their algorithms, and then you get data drift, but that's it for another topic, another webinar topic. So this is the AI strategy development cycle. There's 9 steps, and because I cannot talk about all the aspects of the 4-pillar, I decided to concentrate on the strategy cycle development, and I'll get back to that later. The data and AI capability framework has 10 dimensions in our model, our framework: data, metrics, skills, technology, leadership, culture, strategy, agility, integration, and empowerment. These are all important aspects to consider. And in the strategy development cycle, we get back to that later. And there's the organizing body. And the organizing body can be a center of excellence or an AI business partner, whatever you want to call it. But there's several tasks assigned to that, and it's mostly getting the business aligned, organized, the data activities aligned and organized, so you have an efficient organization. Now, let's talk a bit about strategy, because if you, let's put this one in, strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term overall aim. And there's many definitions of strategy, but basically it is you're at point A, you want to get to point B. What do you need to do to get from A to B, and how do you organize that? That is a strategy. And when you want to become a fully functional, efficient, data-driven AI organization, you need a strategy to get there. Because organizations are on many different levels. Let's get this one in. So basically three big chunks. Where are we going? What are we going to do to get there? And how do we make it happen? And I'm not sure if you can see my little mouse, my pointer. Do I have a pointer, Lara? Can you see a pointer, or isn't it there?
I don't see a pointer.
There's no. Okay, then I'm not gonna use that. So there's three big chunks of activity, and the first two are usually big fun, and on the execution it goes wrong, because the final step of make it real happen is often neglected and often the most difficult one. So let's talk a bit about the cycle. And I'm going to take one nip of my bottle of water. Cheers to you all. Because talking makes thirsty. So we have a 9-step strategy development cycle. And let me walk you through it. First of all, you have to align your digital strategy, your AI strategy, with your company's strategy. Because if you are not supporting your business objectives, you're never going to realize value with your AI activities. And the left gray border is the purpose, vision, and strategy. How do you call that? Circles. And that is the things, or the themes, or what is being defined by your business strategy. So that is where you have to align to. And for instance, if you have an organization who says, well, we want to be really efficient, cost-driven price leaders, then you probably want to emphasize your optimized operations, because then with AI you can reduce your cost. If you are a customer intimate focused organization, you probably want to use your AI activities in engaging customers. If you're a product leader, you may want to infuse your products with smartness, with sensors, and make them perform better for your clients and make them even more attractive. Empowering employees is, I think, always important. And there you can equip your employees with smart tooling, but also the HR department could help employees to perform better, to be better. And there's by now quite some companies who offer smart AI based solutions for your employees. So the first big task is to understand where are the pockets of value that you can deliver with AI, supporting your business strategy. And that will take time to discuss that over. Then you have to analyze where the maturity is of your organization. As a metaphor, if you are working with Excel sheets on a computer on your desk, and you have only a few files with data, it is pretty hard to start working with neural networks and do all kinds of fancy stuff. That may be very interesting for data scientists doing cool stuff. But if your organization is not able to digest that, to deliver that, it's never going to work. So what you have to do is you have to assess the maturity of your organization on several aspects. And this model, that's the Delta model, that's a very well-known one by Davenport. And they have 5 dimensions and 5 levels of maturity. Well, we're not going to go through each level of each matrix, but you get the idea. Well, if you do a kind of assessment, you can get these kinds of outputs where you are scored, you're measured against your industry score, and you're measured against the digital native score. Well, that's a workable one, but I prefer another one, and that's this data and AI capability framework, where you can where you have 10 metrics, which are a bit more specific than the 5 of Davenport. And I prefer to work with these because it gives you more detailed dimensions to work on in your organization. Well, also these 10 dimensions can be measured, and then you get an output like this, a spidergram. And this assessment can be found under the link which I put in the slide. So if you want to give that a try, please do, because I think it's very illustrative and makes you understand where your organization is at the moment. And suppose that you have a output like this, then what you can see, and this is an average output, that data and technology is on, let's say, level 2, 2.5. But that empowerment and skills and culture and agility are still very low. So you probably have to work on those dimensions to make AI really work in your organization. And in another webinar, we are talking more about each dimension. That's the webinar we do at every Tuesday at 12. A little promotion for that series also. So once you have assessed the level of maturity of all the dimensions in your organization, then is the next step that you want to do is to assess or understand what is necessary to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to go, between the current level of your dimension and the necessary level of your dimension or your capability. And it's important to understand that if you are working on Excel sheets, the step to a data lake on a Azure platform in the cloud is pretty tough. So you'll have to decide on the way you want to execute or implement your strategies. because basically that's what you are going to do. You have an objective. You need your dimensions to grow, to be able to fulfill that objective. And there you have to go to. I have a, let's see. Now I'm a bit lost because I have another slide than I thought I had. Wait, okay. There's a little mix-up in my PowerPoint. Excuses for that, but we'll get to that. Once you have assessed your capabilities and you understand what you need to do to grow your organizations toward the necessary level of maturity, you have to consider funding, risk, and return on investment. Because organizations are always bound by a limited amount of money. Unfortunate, but it's a reality. So you have to make choices what you are going to spend in which part to get the best results. So you want to think about how do we get to a level where we can really implement AI and reap value, but in a cost-effective way. And that can mean that you are phasing your activities, or you're giving priority to one aspect in favor of another dimension. So priority in dimensions and priority in time, that could be one thing to consider. So it's not only about getting to where you are, but also understanding, are we able to fund the journey to get where you want to be? Okay, a small movie from Ramesh on. Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Given the time, I'm not going to do this. I'll keep this for another webinar. So once you have the dimensions in place, you know where you want to go to, you have to make the strategic decisions on what are we going to do. For instance, one of the decisions you have to make is, are we going to keep our infrastructure on premises, or are we going to put them all in the cloud? Another decision can be, are we going to set up our own in-house team of data scientists and engineers, or are we going to start with external consultants? Which projects are we going to do first? So there's quite some decisions that you have to make before you can start really implementing your organization. Another one you want to understand is, what are we going to use for tooling? Do we want to use only Python, or are we going to standardize on R? Are we going to use Amazon, Google, Microsoft Cloud? So there are things that you want to do. Do we want to skill up all our people? Do we want to skill up, make them data literate very quickly? Or do we want to phase that over a longer period? Do we want to start with business leadership? Or do we want to start with a group of business people who we want to understand what AI can do? So there's a bunch of decisions that you want to do, or you have to make. Once you are through that, let's say, strategic decision phase, you get into a, let's say, a roadmap definition phase, where you want to develop your implementation plan. And this is a slide from Bain, which I found very illustrative, because what they say, and what you can see, is that they have several work streams and waves. And I think that is a very efficient way of working, because it's never possible to map out your implementation plans from A to Z at one certain moment. There's always things that happen, insecurities. So you want to make it a stepstone approach. And the next slide, maybe even a bit more illustrative, because here, what I did here is I used the assessment which we just saw, the spider, to map out a per 3 months roadmap. And here we saw that the data was pretty good. That was already on a level 4. Metrics was a bit less, but skills was quite underdeveloped. So what you could say is that, okay, let's make our first ambition to get to a level 2 in 3 months. So what would we need to do for that? And then you could decide to hire external consultants to infuse skills in your organization and to upskill your BI analyst up to a level where they can start being data scientists. Another form could be that you also hire a data scientist into your organization. And often it can be a mix. Well, for instance, in technology, if you're on level 3.5, you're already doing pretty good. But you could review your architecture for cloud readiness. And then the next phase, you could say, okay, let's assess cloud vendors. And the phase after it, let's say, okay, let's move our data warehouses to the cloud. And then if you are comfortable with that, you can say, okay, let's move a data lake into the cloud or create a data lake in the cloud. For leadership, it's another important one. And leadership is a very important factor in creating a data-driven and AI professional organization. Because if leadership doesn't understand how to use AI or doesn't understand what AI can do in their organization, they won't be the driving force. Leadership should be walking the talk, I think. Not that they may use it directly or daily in their own work, but they should see the benefits of AI and should promote the benefits of AI. So one step could be that you do an AI for managers course for all leadership. Cultural aspects are really important, because when you don't have a culture of collaboration, of sharing, of innovation, of trying and see what happens and fail fast and recuperate quick, then you'll never get into a AI valuable organization. Strategy, that's what we're talking about now. It's an important one, because strategies you set up once, but they're not poured in concrete. So they will change or be adapted over time. When you have a strategy of let's hire external consultants, which are often quite expensive, and you see your competitors making much more pace with AI, then you may change to a decision to spend more time, spend more money on your own data science team, so you have your knowledge inside. So a strategy development process is a interaction of communication. It's an ongoing conversation. So what you do is you define your endpoint, and even that can change over time. But for let's say a year to 2 year, you'll have a defined strategy where you have an endpoint that you want to get to. But if things in technology, in environment, in business competition change, you may need to change your strategy. So it's not a fixed poured in concrete thing. It's something that develops. Well, there's agility, integration, empowerment. Empowerment has to do with making data tooling and insights available for all your employees. So you get a more motivated and useful AI development. Integration has to do with where do your predictions end up? Will be, let's say, an advice to a manager, which is perfectly okay, like a shop manager who gets the advice based on the prediction of his coming sales, that he needs to add more inventory, he needs to add more employees, store employees. There's quite some actions that he can take. Or is the integration a direct API into a software solution that triggers something? Like, for instance, a self-driving car has a direct integration of predictions. And agility has to do with how flexible is your organization already to change, adapt new culture, adapt new technology, adapt new ways of thinking. And if you have let's say, a very old-fashioned organization that has been doing work like it has been doing work for the last 100 years, it's more difficult to change than when you have a startup or a relatively new technology company which exists for 10 years. So depending on your organization and the maturity of all the different aspects, you will get a different implementation roadmap and maybe different ambitions. So that is about the roadmap to be defined. And when you have defined your implementation roadmap, it is really important to organize your execution in a good way. And actually, it was very difficult to find good literature on organizing execution and implementation. But the important ones are decision rights, information, motivation, and good structure. Once you are going to implement your strategy, your roadmap, the decisions you have made should not be discussed anymore. Neither the big decisions nor the smaller decisions in the implementation itself. Because then, if people are going to second guess or discuss again, you are going to lose your let's say your velocity, your speed of implementation. People need to have the right information at the good time, so they know what to do. They should be motivated, and motivation can be intrinsic motivation, like we really want to do this, or a financial motivation, or a organizational motivation in terms of growing and maybe making a promotion, but that is important. And the structure in which you put all these activities. So it's the governance of such an implementation plan is really important. So that could be a weekly stand up, to use that kind of word in this context, is important to make people aware of what's going on, where are we at the moment, what are the hurdles we are encountering, which are the conflicting interests in several work streams, if they are there. So you have to have a good understanding of the full picture. So a governance process with escalation facilities should be in place. Do we have any questions, Lara?
We don't have any questions just yet on the chat or Q&A. So for those of you, please do feel free.
We keep going.
All right.
So another important factor here is smart. Try to be specific, make it measurable, make it realistic, make it relevant. Is it a factor in the broader plan? And can we make it time-based to see when we should be ready? And I've added this slide, especially because this is often forgotten, especially in the roadmap. So here, project management in this phase of strategy execution is important. You really should have a good project manager. Often project managers are find somewhere in the organization somebody who doesn't have a task at the moment. Okay, let's make him project manager. But being project manager is a real job. So don't underestimate the importance of a project manager. And there's good courses for that to understand what you need to do to be a good project manager. And one important aspect of project management is good communication to everybody. Okay. Finally, or almost finally, as I already mentioned, the strategy loop is an iterative process. It's a conversation. It's a loop, and what you do is finally, if things don't work out like you wanted to do it, you have to make revisions. You have to get together and say, okay, how do we get this process back on track? But the most important thing is that you keep calm and don't boil the ocean. Don't want to do too much in a too short time. If you are a not very mature organization, it's much better to start with first understanding where you are with business intelligence. So in the Gartner cycle of knowing what happened, knowing what happens now, and knowing what will happen, it's much better to start with, or for sure know what to do if you want to know what happened. So that's more the business intelligence game. Then you can grow to, okay, what happens now? So you get real-time dashboards, and preferably you get a dashboard with, okay, what are the spikes or the anomalies or the weird trends at this moment that we see happening in sales, in production. And then the third step is, can we predict what will happen in sales? Can we predict what will happen in manufacturing, in production? But that is a different ballgame. There you get much more advanced algorithms. You need more data. You need a bigger, a better, more professional infrastructure. So going back to the metaphor of being a home cook versus a 3-star Michelin restaurant chef, don't try to get there directly or in a too short time. make steps. Go from home chef to a local restaurant to a bigger restaurant to a bigger restaurant with a better kitchen, and then make the step to the 3-star Michelin restaurant. So what I would suggest you all is do start, because if you don't start, you don't get to the experiences of what's needed to get it working. Initiate the strategy conversation. So get to talk with management about, okay, how are we going to organize this? What's the business strategy? How can we support the business strategy with our AI activities in the best way? And set up a roadmap with work streams to improve and increase your maturity to make that happen. And I suggest set up an AI center of enablement or a center of excellence to organize all the activities that have to be done to get AI up and running in your organization. And with that, it's 16 past 6. We may have time for a Q&A, but for now, thank you for listening to my story on the AI strategy development. Lara, maybe I can ask you to organize the Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reinier. And also thank you coming in from some people on the chat. As Reinier said, if you have questions, just let us know on the chat or the Q&A. Also, for someone who asked, yes, there will be a recording that is shared of the webinar later on. And I think, Reinier, we can also make the slides available, right? A copy of the slides, or
I'll make a subset.
All right. All right. A question from my side, as I was listening to you, I can imagine that you have been and are a consultant to many different organizations. Now, of course, organizations will be in their different maturity of their adoption of AI. And I also wonder how it will work for companies of different sizes. So of course, a smaller organization may be quicker to implement something that might struggle with having fewer resources or a smaller budget, where a larger organization may have those resources and budget or even the people available. But of course, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and it would be hard to really get everyone on the table who has to be involved in the strategy, right? So how has been your experience? How has been your experience working with these different sizes of organizations?
Yeah, well, of course, organizations of a smaller size is a bit more difficult to start with their own AI initiatives. But by now, Amazon and Microsoft offer a multitude of smart AI solutions, which you can implement by putting up an API from Microsoft, and you can already start with smart AI solutions in your organization. Let me give you an example. Suppose you want to do something with natural language processing and translating text. Then by now it's possible to call up an API from Microsoft. You integrate that in your own website, your own solution, and the full functionality will be offered to you. So what you have to do is you load up your own data and you'll get your translation back. Or suppose you want to do something with image recognition. You want to have a camera which recognizes certain products. Then you pull up an API from Microsoft or from Amazon. You train the API with the product that you want to have image recognized, and then you'll get the predictions served by Microsoft. So the make or buy decision, smaller companies will often buy more while larger companies may often build more. So as a smaller company, it's also very well possible to use the benefits of AI.
And you walked us through quite a funnel. I do see a question or a comment coming in from the chat, and I believe this is someone who has worked with you before, from Tim de Boer. Little children intuitively embrace tech without going through many learning phases. All tools are now so simple to use that I would like to challenge your 3-star chef analogy. I would argue that it is more about pragmatic growth hacking.
Yeah, I tend to disagree with Tim. Hi, Tim. Nice that you're listening in. In an organization, we see that, okay, a bigger organization, we see that there's so many aspects that have to be aligned that it's not just a growth hacking exercise. And even though that the tooling becomes more easy and more easy to use, it's still not a growth hacking simple exercise. So for this, I tend to disagree. We see that larger organizations really go through a strategy and strategy implementation phase to get AI working and create value for the organization.
Okay, I see Tim is in agreement on the data organization. Now you've walked us through quite a funnel of strategy development. Where do you see the biggest bottleneck at what step for most organizations?
The biggest bottleneck is the realization that it's not a technical thing, it's an organizational development thing. And once you understand that, you realize that you have to develop not only your data and technology dimensions, but you have to develop your skills dimensions, your leadership dimensions, your metrics. There's more to be developed and aligned than only data and technology. I think that's the biggest hurdle. It's like the iceberg I showed. It's 10-20%, which you can see, which is data technology, but 70% is more the human organizational aspects that are the bottlenecks. People always say we want to change, we love change, but when they are confronted with change, they actually don't want to change. So we see many perfectly fine solutions being developed by data scientists. They're being offered to the business and say, hey, with this tool, with this solution, you can work much better, more efficient. And then the reaction is, who the hell do you think I am, that you are, but that I am already 10 years of experience and I can do it much better than a machine. So it's that culture you have to develop. So there you also have to understand that you have to interact really frequently with the business, take them by the hand, tell them what you want to do, make them understand the benefits in the early phase, so that then they will adopt much easier the solution that you serve. That's so it's the human organizational aspects are the biggest bottleneck, Laura.
Yeah, and that of course also would involve like a whole different type of people in the organization than just the tech teams. Now we're coming towards the end of our webinar, and thank you everyone for sticking around. So to maybe end on a more positive note than the challenges, without maybe naming a specific organization, but what is an organization, or what is perhaps a sector where you see successful implementation of the things we talked about today?
I see a lot of implementation within banks. They traditionally have a lot of data and are more at ease with these AI activities. telcos are doing a good job. Retail is getting up to speed really fast. So there's quite some industries where it's already taking off. Even in manufacturing, we have a great example of a concrete production factory who are really AI driven. They have automated as much as possible. So it really becomes, it takes off at the moment.
Great. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everyone for being with us today. And of course, a big thank you to you, Reinier, for the webinar today. As Reinier shared, we do have some other webinars coming up, and Reinier is also hosting a series on AI for business, how to add value to your business with AI. I did share the link in the chat, so if you would like to learn more about those webinars and sign up for them, you can do so on the website. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Lara. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.